Welcome everybody to Talk Openly. I'm Jack. This is my excellent friend Daniel. Hello, Daniel.
Hello. Hi, Jack. Hi, everybody out there in Talk Openly land.
Yeah, it's a cold and rainy and very stormy night here in Kingston, Washington. What's it like in Sacramento?
Pretty warm actually.
Yeah.
It's been sunny and warm. I got a sunburn recently.
What?
Yeah.
How'd you get
So
sunburned?
I was sitting out at a doubleheader softball game.
Daniel, and you didn't bring sunscreen?
No, it was nice and cool when I left in the morning, and I didn't even think about it. So I did. I covered my head with my sweatshirt though.
Oh, good.
So at least my balding head didn't get too burned. I just got a little bit on my arm.
Yeah, anyone who has to go on vacation with me knows that I am a sunscreen enthusiast. So I'm very strict about sunscreen, especially in very sunny or tropical places.
It's critical for pale people like us.
Yeah, I've had bad burns, and my mom was one of those people like back in the 60s, 70s, where she would like go out and lay in the sun with like tanning oil on.
Yeah.
And those like reflector things.
Oh.
And now she's got like all this crap that she's dealing with. So I do not want that.
No, that's funny. This is appropriate for tonight's discussion. My dad actually, he has been, over the last few years, the doctors have been whittling away at skin cancer, and then he told me that his brother has it, and I'm like, oh my God, I just know I'm destined for this.
No, you're not destined. You can wear sunscreen.
Oh yeah, no, I do. For the most part, I do. I didn't this weekend. I didn't even think about it, but for the most part, I'm a big broad brimmed hat and sunscreen enthusiast, or even like those swimming shirts and stuff, the whole thing.
Yeah, totally. That's good. Yeah, and we are going to be talking more about the body tonight. This meat sack that we got to carry around with us and take care of, because it's bringing us places and helping us study and whatnot. So but yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit later tonight. But I'd love to hear how your last week has been going. I know last week we did a little bit shorter of a session because I was feeling unwell with COVID, but would love to hear a little bit more tonight about what's going on with you.
Yeah, well, I moved out of my house successfully. I recovered from my own bout with whatever sort of cold that was lingering around for a bit, and was able to get out of the house, move out. I'm living at my girlfriend's house now. You can tell there's slightly different environment. So the dust is still settling. Like there's, it's when a change of environment is always, change of scenery is always sort of like an adjustment for both the.
Absolutely. Well, and I heard too, isn't moving supposed to be one of like the top 5 most stressful events of like your lifetime, like just moving places? And I wonder if part of that is the shift in environment too.
Oh, for sure. I know it's a great stressor. I have a lot of practice at it though, ever since I was a little kid. So I don't think it's as big of a stressor for me as it might be for people who stay put for longer periods of time. But I'm a bit of a vagabond, so I'm used to uprooting and moving on. But still, it doesn't change the fact that a new environments that you just have to you're constantly sort of reassessing things that you previously took for granted. So, it's anyway, so it's different. One of the problems that's arisen for me anyway is that, so where I lived before, I had this nice little spot sectioned off for my meditations. It was like, it was like curtained. It was just really like private, very intimate, very, very inviting for my meditations. And I have not yet recreated anything like that or discovered anything quite like that. And so That combined with sort of like a lot of movement, a lot of busyness and stuff, my practice has fallen off a bit.
Sure.
Not totally, not completely, but I am finding it much harder to do, like to get back into the rhythm of like regular daily morning meditations. Part of it is that it's not just new environment, but my schedule is all shifted around. All kinds of stuff has changed. So
Yeah.
it's just finding a new groove, you know. So yeah, that's what's going on with me. It's I find, you know, when I do meditate, I'm finding it to be really helpful to apply advice that like Lama has been giving us about meditation and about you know, like analytical or discursive meditations, and how to sort of use the calmness and presence to look at things a little bit deeper. So it's been helpful when I do meditate, but my practice has fallen off a bit. So
Sure.
there's that. Also, I was going to point out right before the show started, like about an hour before the show started, there had been this sound that I kept hearing, this squeaky sound
Uh-oh.
outside, and it'd been going on for a long time. I was just like, I chalked it up to like some kind of a bird or something out there, and then I like as I listened to it, I was like, that's not a bird. You know, I don't know what it is, but I went out and looked for the source of the sound, and it was a baby squirrel. And
Oh,
yeah, then his mama didn't come back for it. I'd been out there for a long time, and so it's not it doesn't look damaged or diseased in any way. It just looks like it's not tended for or tended to.
oh,
So yeah, so anyway, you might hear it in the background.
okay.
So the wildlife rehab place is closed for today, and so I
Mhm.
can't take it in until tomorrow morning. But I have it all in a little nest of its own with a little rice sock, you know, that was my get
Oh,
it. I keep it warm because it's important for it to be warm.
yeah.
And so anyway, you might hear a little bit of squeaking in the background. It's driving my dog a little crazy.
Yeah, seriously.
She's crazy about squirrels in an unhealthy way. Uh, unhealthy
Yeah,
for the squirrels, that is.
yeah,
But
totally.
in this case, it's kind of cute actually that she, you know, she doesn't seem to be interested in it as a predator. She's just genuinely sort of like curious, like what is
Huh.
that?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Wow, well, good for you for noticing and caring about a life
yeah,
and yeah, and maybe, in hundreds of lifetimes from now, you'll have this karmic connection maintained and
maybe.
you'll like know each other in some other special way.
Oh, that'd be
This is
wonderful.
really
Or
sweet.
maybe it already is there, right?
Yeah.
Maybe this squirrel was my mother in a former life. Who
Oh,
knows?
she
You know,
definitely was.
right. Well,
Yeah.
you know, to that end, you know, I did actually end up getting a little bit. I read online like, okay, so what do you do? Of course, you take it to a wildlife rehab place, right? You're not supposed to like hold on to it. But it did say that you can substitute puppy formula for mother's milk. And so I went and got a little puppy formula in a little bottle, and it seems to be drinking it. So like, hopefully that'll help it make it through the night and make it safely into the
Oh,
wildlife.
you can be the temporary squirrel mom.
I'll be the temporary squirrel mom. I take it. You know, it's a nice distraction, if nothing else.
Yeah. Well, and able to be generous, right? Get to practice compassion, generosity. I
Yeah,
imagine a little bit of patience, to figure out what to do. So
sure.
yeah, all the
It,
bodhisattva
it
qualities.
is. It is a good opportunity to practice. It's also a good opportunity to contemplate sort of like the nature of life as it is, right? So, you know, the fact that you know, this little squirrel found itself all helpless out there in this big scary world, and you know, and that there's a good chance that it might not make it, might die through, you know, like it's just sort of, it's yeah, it is. It's a ripe situation for looking a
Yeah.
little bit deeper into things.
Yeah, and pertinent for tonight too, right?
Yeah,
Because this little squirrel has this tiny, I imagine, kind of hairless and unprotected body, and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, just without their mom, or just a little ball of flesh.
That's right. It
Yeah, how
really
could you
is just a
survive in
little
that
ball of
body?
squeaky flesh.
Yeah.
And I'm not so different from it, you know. I'm kind of the
Yeah.
same way. I just sit here and squeak away.
Yeah,
wishing I had like a warm mommy to take care of me.
I know. Gosh, yeah, all the time thinking, really thinking that. Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Um,
there is actually, it's I always think it's interesting how deep down inside we really do want some kind of a like a savior or somebody, you know, some big parental figure to come in and make everything better somehow. It's a
oh
nice,
yeah.
you know, wishful thinking that it turns out not to be the case most of the time.
Yeah, I know. We're our own saviors, damn
That's
it.
right. Damn it. Oh, why's it gotta be like that?
Man, yeah, yeah, yep. That is still alluring. That is
Yeah.
still alluring.
I'm sure it'll take a while for it to really sink in, but
Yeah,
one of
for
these days
sure.
we'll wake up to it.
Yeah.
What about you, Jack? Are you free? You're free of COVID or getting
I'm
over it?
I'm COVID free. There's still some kind of effects, lingering effects. Like I've got this kind of weird coughy, throaty, dry kind of feeling in my chest. And but yeah, it was all in all, I feel a good experience. It sucked, but I really was reminded about, yeah, just my body and how not in control I am, which I want to talk about more later. But yeah, I'm back to work, and I started my school internship, which I'm doing at my job. And so instead of 4 days a week in Seattle, I'm going to be 5 days a week in Seattle. So there's plenty of people who do that commute 5 days a week. So I just need to remind myself of that. Like, this is not abnormal. Like I can do this.
Sure.
And one thing that's been really, really helpful is just kind of like this basic mindfulness reflection, in kind of I think one of the really potent um, reminders within like more like modern mindfulness kind of practice, more kind of like mindfulness psychology or whatever, is really the urging to stay in the moment as best as you can. And so that's been something I've really, really been putting effort in this week, because I knew that this was going to be a particularly stressful week. Like, Sunday, I was going back to work after a whole week of, being out due to COVID. And I also had to wake up at 3:45 in the morning to take my sister to the airport. Because she got COVID from me. And so she had to stay longer. And, I was starting my internship. My work days are being expanded to 10-hour days to accommodate for the shift and like the internship and whatnot. So I was really like, okay, I have to like prepare. But I noticed that when I start doing my preparing thing, what's actually happening is that I'm just like so anxious. Like I'm just coming up with, all these different scenarios that aren't actually happening. And trying to plan ahead of time and get things, all my ducks in a row. So I'm happy to say that I've done a really good job not doing that. So I've really put some effort towards, no, I'm just going to do what I'm doing right now. Like, really, that's all that I'm going to do. And I keep a good planner. So all that stuff is written down. You're going to get to it. So just focus on what you're doing right now. And it really, it works, right? Like it works.
You're
Um,
freed from some of the mental looping.
oh God, yes. The future tripping, the mental looping, and just free to be doing what I'm actually doing.
Yeah.
Which really makes it so much more enjoyable too. Because I'm not off thinking about all the things that I'm worried about. It's kind of it just makes sense.
Super enjoyable. And you know what's amazing about it? Tell me if this is your experience as well. But that even sometimes the tough sort of like 10-hour work days or whatever, like when you're in it and it's not enjoyable, it's not pleasant in the sense of like there's not a pleasurable sensation going on. You're actually maybe feeling tired, maybe feeling a bit worn down or whatever. But when you're mindfully present in that moment with whatever is arising, that there can be a genuine feeling of sort of like peace and like okayness with it all. And you're like,
Yeah.
actually, it's all right. This is fine.
Yeah, I think that the word you used, okayness,
Yeah.
that is really what's arisen for me. Because I've actually still felt, like I'm not 100% when it comes to my health. I'm still feeling the effects, even though, I don't technically have COVID anymore. I'm still feeling some lingering effects. And so I'm not 100% that way. And I do have a lot to do. But yeah, there is just this sense of like, I'm doing it.
Yeah,
It's
I'm still
happening.
breathing. Yeah.
Right,
Let's go.
right.
Right.
Just getting it
Good.
done.
I'm
Yeah,
glad, Jack. That's awesome. I'm glad that you're
thank you.
feeling better for one, even if there's still some lingering symptoms, and hopefully you don't get that long COVID stuff
Oh
that
God, yeah, I
is
hope.
about, right? And yeah, just way to kind of like get after it, right?
Yeah.
I
Oh
like it.
yeah.
I like it.
Thanks. Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
job.
And, we talk about this on the show, pretty often, like when we're able to just kind of be with what's arising, our relationships are so much deeper, or so much better. Like the people that I work with, I'm actually able to connect. It's funny though, like of course, like I'm not perfect, right? I'm not a Buddha. I haven't figured out how to do this, like in a really effective and all the time way. I got home from work yesterday, and I could tell I was a little bit just like brain dead, and my partner was talking to me in the kitchen about something that he had gone through during the day. And like I could sense that it bothered him, what had happened. And I could just feel it. I was just like dead. I was like, just like it's not empathy, not computing, like it's not computing. So I had to apologize, because I could tell that it was not a satisfying conversation on his end.
Yeah, he's like talking to a wall. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm just like, doop, doop, doop.
Right, right. Well, that, at least so being aware that that was the situation, then you could call it out yourself rather than wait to be called out on it.
Oh, he called me out.
Oh, he called you. Okay, never mind then.
Yeah. But yes, eventually that's the goal.
Yes, sometimes we just don't have the capacity, right? It's good
Yeah.
to recognize that and just be like, man, I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
I'm empty myself, right?
Yeah. Yep. It's not there. It's not
Yeah.
happening.
Mhm.
Yeah, better to go talk to the cat.
Seriously, right? Yeah, there's times where that's definitely more effective.
Yeah, yes. Well, what do you think? Should we check out some Lojong?
Let's do some Lojong. I
Do
will
it.
put my screen here.
All right.
There we are.
And
Can you see it?
for those who haven't seen this, this is the random Lojong slogan generator on the Lions Roar website. It's very useful.
lionsroardharmacenter.org.
Yeah. Let's
All right.
see. 46. Don't allow 3 things to diminish. And it looks like those 3 things are: 1, interested humility toward the Kalyana Mitra, spiritual friend. So I think a guru. 2, joy in our practice. And 3, commitment to the path. So not allowing those 3 things to diminish. Why do you think those 3 things? They seem kind of broad, but I think we can break them down a little bit.
So I suppose that there's actually, to begin with, a natural tendency, or maybe there is just a possibility that that too will wane, right? So there is a sort of like this sense, at least in my experience, of these periods where the relationship between myself and towards Lama and towards the Dharma and towards the Sangha, it sort of ebbs and flows a little bit. Sometimes it's like super strong. Other times it feels a little bit more diminished. In fact, I've been reflecting on that quite a lot recently, where I'm like, yeah, it feels like there's a little bit of space, a little bit of distance there, where I think all three of these things have diminished. No, not entirely, but I can
Yeah.
definitely see the waning. I had this experience actually where I haven't had darshan with Lama. I missed one of them, and then because of him scheduling and whatever, I haven't seen him in darshan for a while.
Mhm.
And so I had this experience where I went to go walk my dog last night, and I went over to walk her around the Dharma Center. It was at night. I didn't expect anybody to be there or anything. And I was walking down the alley, and and all of a sudden this car comes down the alley and it stops, and the window, the window comes down, and it's Lama, and he's like,
Oh,
hi. And it was such a it was a pretty brief interaction, but it was so I was blown away by sort of the serendipity of it all, because I kind of felt like I needed a little boost right in that moment, right?
yeah.
And there he was, and he had some encouraging words, and I was reminded, I was like, wow, right, this is my teacher, like this is important.
Yeah.
He reminded me of it actually. He was like, hey, you're important to me. Like, let's meet and let's talk for a little bit, right? And
Yeah.
it was so helpful. I was stirred. So anyway, I think that there is certainly, at least in my experience, a, a possibility of these our feelings sort of waning, and I think
Sure.
that that's
Yeah.
something to be on the lookout for, right?
Yeah.
So,
There's definitely the ebbs and flows for me in enthusiasm, where there will be periods that I'm really like and it seems to coincide with when I'm doing a lot of like Lam Rim practice.
mm,
So like kind of stages of the path and doing meditations on that, because it really just kind of centers me
yeah,
on the path. So I think for number 3, it's that it's really good for me for commitment to the path to be doing Lam Rim meditation. But yeah, there's these kind of ebbs and flows with where my mind might be really really focused on like school or work,
yeah,
and we are householder yogis, so we have these commitments, these responsibilities to our life that monastics wouldn't have, and so we're doing a different type of training, but yeah, I think it's I really appreciate this slogan, because it just helps me see that, in everything that I do, even if it is like school or work focused, like if I can bring in the Dharma too, or bring those things to the Dharma, um, then that really, really helps just kind of ground me and center me. And I love what you said about Lama. That's so sweet, that you guys ran into each other. And yeah, it's really wonderful, that kind of like rejuvenation of the relationship. I
yeah.
have no, yeah, go ahead.
No, just in my case, I noticed that it wasn't just like, so there was a deep appreciation for him as my teacher, but also sort of like, because I was reflecting on it, I thought like, wow, why did I feel so stirred, so why did it feel so good, just a brief run-in with Lama, right? What
Mhm.
was that? And then I started reflecting on like what has come from that relationship, right? That in fact, my understanding, that as much as I understand the Dharma, that has been largely because of him, right? In fact, if I trace it back to its roots, pretty much everything I know about Buddha Dharma comes from Lama in one way or another, right?
Yeah.
And when I reflect back on how important that has been, how helpful that has been, right? And how like I was thinking to myself, I was like, and this has to do with point number 2, maintaining joy in our practice. Well, and 3, commitment to the path, which is that I realized, I was thinking about it, I thought, never in my life I have ever experienced something that is so true, right? That is so truthful. That is, that sort of like can withstand scrutiny and can withstand critical analysis, right? And to really turn out to be like a shining lamp of truth. Like I have never discovered anything like that before.
Yeah.
And the effects on my life are profound. And so when I really look at that and I look at my community and how important that community is to me and how supported I am through that, it actually it sort of emboldens me, right? Like it makes me, it puts a little wind into my sail.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think that there, I think that has everything to do with not allowing these three things.
Mm-hmm. Nice. It sounds like that's part of a little bit like the reflection on having a precious human life, like a human life where I have time and a space to practice. Like, I work with people all day who don't have a home, and you can't train. You can't do meditation when you don't have a home in Seattle and it's wet all the time. So yeah, these kind of reminders that like, no, this is like I have a really good life.
Yeah.
Like I have a teacher who knows me personally. That's amazing. So yes, that really leads into number 2, the joy in our practice, and then kind of reinforces the commitment. So, oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Good
Thank you
stuff.
so much. Yeah. And show us, oh, never mind.
Oh, no.
I liked the picture. But
I'm going to show you the
um
picture then. There we go.
yeah, okay, so it's a drawing of yeah, tantric enlightened beings. And it looks like it's from 1500. That's incredible.
Wow.
Wow. That's probably Kala Chakra, maybe? I don't
Maybe.
know, maybe.
I'm not good at the iconography.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, thanks for
Yeah, of
bringing it back up. It's beautiful.
course.
All right. Well, we don't have a 100-armed body yet.
I
We've got
wouldn't know what to
this
do with them. I
body.
barely know what to do with 2 of them.
I know. Well, let's talk a little bit about the body and illness. I know we got started on it a little bit last week. And when I was in the midst of COVID. I don't remember anything we talked about. I was very tired.
Yeah, all right, fine. Maybe we can talk about some of it again.
That's fine. Fine.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if maybe we could start out with there's what's called the 5 remembrances. And I found this on the Plum Village website, so Thich Nhat Hanh's community. And I thought it put the body and illness in a good context. So number 1, I am the nature to grow old. I cannot escape old age. I am of the nature to get sick. I cannot escape sickness. I am the nature to die. I cannot escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. And lastly, I inherit the results of my actions of body, speech, and mind. My actions are my continuation. So I really appreciated this little passage of the 5 remembrances in thinking about the body and illness, because it's just so true, right? We are the nature of these things, and we can't escape. Our body can't escape illness. As much as we can shun and feel frustrated by it, it's gonna happen. Same as growing old and dying, and that's the same for everyone we care about and love. We're in these bodies, yeah, so temporarily. So it just kind of put it in perspective for me, and I think very beautiful language, which Thich Nhat Hanh always does, right?
Of course, yeah, he's so poetic. I really appreciate the 5th point.
Mm,
I inherit the results of my actions of body, speech, and mind. My actions are my continuation. I find that it's heartening, especially within this context, right? Like that in fact, yeah, we are this essence of, that our bodies are growing old. They're gonna, that we were born, so we're gonna die. There's aging, old age, whatever, old age and death, right? Sickness and death, and that there's nothing that we can do to escape that. But that there are things that we do or can do that contribute to the quality of our life and to our experience throughout that entire process. So regardless, our relationship to these facts, to the truth of, the fact that we were born, we're going to die, and that we're, going to get old, and that we're going to get sick, and all of that, that can be a source of great suffering, right? Just that knowledge, like if we become, there's a reason why we tend to avoid that, right? Like we want to maintain youth for as long as possible with, plastic surgery and other body modifications, right? And taking all kinds of pills and, magical elixirs or whatnot to try to remain young forever, Instagram filters, all of that. Right. So like within our society, there's this sort of deep desire to avoid these points that are in fact just the way things are, right? Yeah. It's so like, death and the dying process has been completely sanitized. It's outside of our view. We're not familiar with it.
So interesting to think about that. Yeah. That we just don't see it. Unless we're, physically there when someone dies, and even then, it can feel like, no, that's not possible. Yeah.
So we spend all this time within our Western society, at least, we spend all this time in deep ignorance about the facts of life, right? That this is just the way things are. And so I think that it sometimes comes as a rude awakening, right? When we encounter people who, are going through, like I have friends who are old and sort of like quite old and are contemplating death, and, their bodies have been falling apart for a long time. And it's difficult after spending a long time, many years or lifetimes, thinking like, oh, nothing's going to change. I'm going to, I'll just keep going. I'll keep going. And then the facts sort of start to become inescapable, right?
Yeah.
That at some point you can't avoid it anymore.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And that's like, that's a scary thing for me, because I have such a, I think I mentioned this last time, like I really have, an attachment towards my body in terms of like being a little bit perfectionistic about it. And, at one point in my life, when I was not very well mentally, I was extremely rigid and perfectionistic about my physical health, to the point where it's a little bit obsessive, like, weighing out spices and like calculating all these. Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. Exercising just like hours and hours a day. That's a very extreme attachment to the body, that we can somehow like perfect this thing that is just going to fall apart inevitably anyways. And then on, the other flip side of that is that we of course don't want to abandon the body, because that's not helpful either. So as always, it's finding the middle way, and what is the purpose of the body in this life.
Yeah
Yeah.
No, that's a great point. I mean, the thing is that the body itself forms our sort of our primary basis for this sense of a fixed solid self, right? So when you look into many of the spiritual practices, from way back when, many of them had to do with sort of punishing the body, right? To prove beyond a shadow of doubt, I am not this, right?
Like the ascetic kind of
Super,
approach.
yeah, exactly. Don't feed it, deny it sleep, whatever, deny it comfort, deny it pleasure, all this. And I'm sure that can be instructive to some degree, but it's not particularly helpful. And I think that's what's so beautiful about this path that we're on, this fact that we're trying to establish middle ground, that the body actually is not something that needs to be discarded. It's not a bad thing. It's not, there may not be a self in the body, but that doesn't mean that we need to do anything to it other than care for it, because it's
Right.
only through this body that we have this precious human existence, right? It's the only way that we
Yeah.
can learn the Dharma. It's the only way that we can practice. It's, you
Yeah.
know, it is still, sure, it can be the foundation for a mistaken sense of self. Sure, absolutely. And as a result, it's also the undoing of that mistaken sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's that recognition of that middle approach was definitely part of Buddha Shakyamuni's path too. You know, he started, of course, with like the opulence of a royal family, and was like, okay, no, that's not it, right?
Right.
You know, kind of lavishing myself in pleasure and sense kind of all the senses getting activated. That's not it. So and then he went, to an approach where he was doing the ascetic lifestyle for a while, and yeah, really abusing his body. And in Old Path White Clouds, which is Thich Nhat Hanh, the story goes that he was able to see through the generous act of a child bringing him food, that actually, like, that's not the path either. And so he ate the food and was able to get some sustenance. And then I'm pretty sure it was in this telling of it, that evening is when he had his enlightenment
Mhm.
of the middle way. And so that's really interesting that, the body, excuse me, is this kind of vehicle for our realizations. And that's it, no more, no less.
Right.
So it's important to really, investigate that, and use it appropriately.
Yeah, well, and what a great opportunity to investigate it when we get sick,
Yeah.
right? So there are many teachers. It's hard, this is just something that I've read a lot and heard a lot about, which is so many Dharma teachers talk about how we should really view illness and approaching death as of incredible benefit. We should, we're very fortunate when we're ill, when we're in pain, when, and it's hard to take. That's actually, I think, a pretty bitter pill to swallow, and
Yeah.
it's something that really requires, I think, careful reflection, right? It's not a dismissive sort of thing, right? Like, it's not trying to say, oh, it's all okay, and trying to make the pain go away or anything, but rather that that our illness is in body and in mind. And when our body is functioning fine enough that we can, go through our ordinary day, then we have a tendency to sort of stay ignorant of the truths that were mentioned right at the outset there, right? Like we
Yeah.
tend to kind of go on like, oh, it's all fine and dandy, happy, it's all going to be okay forever and ever. And even when other people get sick, sometimes we're like, ooh, right, oh, that person is sick or that person is dying, and then we just like quickly forget about it and move on to something else, right? And so the opportunity when we ourselves are sick, lying in bed, coughing our lungs out or whatever the case might be, right, like that, those are actually really precious opportunities for insight meditation.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, and for you and me right now in our bodies, we were able to have the illnesses, maybe be able to reflect on it, and then get better. And I know you mentioned last time that sometimes when we just let the body do its thing, right, it heals. But then, of course, there's going to be times where it doesn't,
That's
right?
right.
Or there's types of illnesses that you really need to attack if you're going to get better from it. And I really hope that I can face those things, with the kind of meditative mind and approach that I used just having COVID, which was like, okay, this is the body, right? This is what the body does. And I'm not in control of my body. Wow. If
Uh,
I was in control of my body, I would never get sick, right?
that's right.
It's really humbling. And on the flip side of that too, it's kind of amazing that there's all of these things happening in our body all the time, that we don't have control of, that are just keeping us alive.
Yeah.
It freaks me out a little bit, to imagine, like, man, my body's just breathing. I'm kind of being breathed, like,
Right, right.
yeah, all these functions that are just happening without my control. It's
That's
so
right.
much more of an
Systems within
intelligence.
systems within systems within systems, right?
Right,
And it's
right.
all impermanent. It's all moving. It's always in a steady state of flux, right? Like, yeah, like you said, like our illness, it too is impermanent. So like it can be a source of hope, right? That like pain, for example, there's a lot of pain in the body, and when you focus on pain and you bring your awareness to it, you notice that it does fluctuate. It might be sort of regular and it might be chronic, and it may actually never go away completely, right? So there's a chance of that, as you pointed out. But at some point, it does ebb and flow, right? Your awareness of it
Yeah.
does change and that's a great opportunity to reflect on impermanence
Yeah.
and on emptiness, right? Like looking at the body and being like, because the great tendency when we're sick and in pain is to say, I am sick. I'm in pain, I'm
Mm.
hurting, right? And the fact is that that labeling, that information, that that's not true, right? And it's actually causing suffering where there doesn't need to be. And I think that that's what's meant by the fact that these are opportunities for insight meditation, that when we really reflect on it, we see like these are phenomena that are appearing, right? They appear and then they disappear.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fascinating. And even I think meditation can be a really powerful way to do this too, because I don't know about you, but when I sit in meditation, I'm not comfortable. My physical body is rarely comfortable.
Mm,
And I've tried all different kinds of cushions. I have a meditation bench. It's not often that I'm sitting in meditation that I feel physically comfortable. And so that is something that I try and focus on too, is like, okay, yeah, this body is kind of like in the nature of just kind of suffering, but at the same time, as I sit and notice my body, like you said, it does change. Just this morning I was having a sit where the first half of it, my like middle back was just really tense and uncomfortable, and my mind was really starting to focus on it, and then I just redirected back to what I was doing, and within minutes I kind of like checked back in with that feeling, and I was like, oh, that it's not really there.
right.
um, and it doesn't always happen that way, sometimes it stays around, but that in itself is like a good little micro moment that you can explore that very thing about the body and impermanence.
Yeah, that's one of the things about, I mean, I think it's kind of fascinating because I don't know how well this works with sort of like severe pain, but mild discomforts, you can definitely if you just focus on it and use it as your object of meditation, right? And you just focus all your awareness on it, it will be just like every other thing. Like at some point you kind of lose track of it and you start thinking about other things, and then you're like, wait, I need to come back to my pain. And then you're like, well, it's not quite the same pain as it was. Maybe
Yeah,
there's like a little bit of tightness still there, but it's not the same tightness that it was before.
that's
I
super
think,
interesting.
and I think the thing about pain that's kind of interesting is like, I think that out of the 8 worldly concerns, I think my biggest sort of driving force is towards pleasure and away from pain. And so
Ah.
yeah, like that's my thing, right? I love pleasure,
Mhm.
I hate pain. And so like I think it's actually a really good opportunity. Like the physical pain is this great opportunity to really reflect on that, right? Because it's in some sense easier to do than it is with pleasure. Pleasure is easier to just kind of get lost in it, whereas pain is very present. It kind of forces you to be
Yeah.
there with it, right? And so So yeah, I think like in my case, I'm not wishing myself any pain, but when it's there, I'm hoping that I can be, aware and present and to be mindful of it in this way, right? And to use it as an opportunity to really deepen my practice.
Yeah. I'm curious about that. Yeah, the pleasure and pain little binary. Um, do you feel like that kind of, reaching for pleasure makes pain more difficult when it does arise?
Yeah, I think that in to the degree that pain prevents pleasure, yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I suppose so. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't totally know. Yeah. Well, I think, you know, yeah, a little bit because um for example, I'm thinking about being in my bed and how much I love my bed,
Yeah,
and how pleasurable it is to just be like comfortable and cozy and whatnot. Um, when I can't get comfortable, it's kind of all the more difficult, right? Because I'm kind of chasing after like, oh no, but I just I want that position that felt really good or whatever. And so I think it kind of like they go together that way, right? Where the chasing for pleasure can increase the suffering of pain when it's there because we're expecting it to be a certain way, for it to feel good, and then it's not because that's our body.
yeah,
um
for sure. Definitely, there's a tremendous amount of displeasure or dis-ease with pursuing pleasure, without a doubt, because and it is painful in its own right. Because it just never is. Even if you do get just the right whatever it is, and it hits just right, it's temporary. And now what?
so
Uh,
temporary.
and then you're like back to like, you're like, oh shoot, now what am I gonna do? Like I can't just keep doing whatever that
Yeah.
is, right?
Well, and it kind of makes me think of like, when I was using substances really heavily, there'd always be this kind of like turning of the dials, right? Like,
Oh
or
yeah.
kind
Oh,
of where,
oh.
where you're like, okay, I just gotta like turn up this notch a little bit.
Yeah. A
Like,
little more upper, a little
right,
bit
I need a little
downer.
bit of
Oh,
uppers and I
a little
just
bit more. Yeah.
exactly to try and like get to the right, feeling that only lasts for like literally moments, and then you're having to turn the knobs again. Um,
Right. It's
it's
this
such
constant.
misery.
Yeah, it's a constant sort of futzing about with your state, your state of mind or your physical, sensations. It's constantly tweaking and modifying, and it's just it's madness, right? It turns out that
Yeah.
there's
It
plenty of
really
highs and
is.
lows as we're talking about, right? There is pleasure, there is pain. None of it's permanent, and actually, we're not in great control of it. That's what you were pointing out as well, right? We're not in like we don't have a tremendous amount of control over the arising of pleasure and pain.
Yeah.
If we did, I would be, I don't know, maybe we wouldn't be talking, right? Like
Right.
if I could control my pleasure and sustain it, I don't know that I'd be here.
Yeah. Well, you'd maybe be in like the God realm or something, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Like, I like the kind of uh that image of like someone who's just experiencing just constant pleasure, and then yet they're also of the nature of having a body, and so at some point are going to experience like this just slamming into a brick wall of reality that like, oh, this can't be maintained.
Right.
That's like awful, right? That's like
Right.
worse, that's worse than, like having just a normal ass like human experience.
It's
Just
only like
to
a
fall from that height.
I read somewhere like it's only like a week that the gods have to deal with this sort of recognition of that the fact that they're about to, that their merit is running out and they're about to, have to fall back down to their lower realms. That it's only about a week, but
Sounds
because
like
the
a
gods,
shitty week.
what's that?
It sounds like a shitty week though.
It's a shitty week because, well, not only that, but because the gods live so long, a week to a god is many, many millions of years, perhaps, of this experience,
Oh,
right? And
oh,
so, yeah,
yeah,
like,
you don't want that.
No, we don't want that. So like for us, we're kind of lucky because, you know, we have this, the catalyst is sort of like always in front of us if we let it be, right? That we actually can see the demise of the body, of our own and that of others constantly. Like it's
Yeah,
the nature of the aggregates is change and suffering, and there's no self,
yeah.
right? So
What fortune, right?
yeah, it
We
doesn't
get to
sound
notice
like
it.
fortune,
Yeah,
uh, but definitely, right? It's a good opportunity if we're willing to take it.
that's why I think like the five remembrances and just like the Buddha's first teaching of like uh, uh that samsara is suffering.
Yeah,
That it sounds so negative on the surface, right? But it's such a potent medicine, because it's like, oh, okay. I that's just the way it is. So I don't have to fight that I'm sick. I don't have to fight that I'm not feeling great. It's just
right.
the nature of my body in this existence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the thing is that, you know, isn't that a bit of a trip, Jack? That so like it's true that on one level, impermanence can be really painful, right? So the more that we ignore it, the more that we don't sort of accept it or to look deeply into impermanence, the more that it can be painful and be a source of suffering. But it's also something that can be like of like amazing comfort. It's such a
Yeah.
strange thing, right? That when we really look at it, when we see this impermanence and we see this constant moving, right? Like, wow, that actually cures. It's a strange thing that the poison itself can be a medicine.
Yeah. Well, it's poison or medicine depending on our state of mind about it. And
Yeah,
yeah, Lama said something recently, yeah, about how when we really reflect on those truths, um, we're no longer fighting reality. And so naturally we ease into this kind of calm, this just recognition uh, that there's nothing to fight
yeah.
or strive for, which is, yeah, incredible,
It's like
incredible.
the yeah, it's like the notion of the, you know, the second arrow, right? Or other arrows, right? Where yeah, you can't help the first arrow that you got shot with, but then, you know, we have this tendency to stick ourselves with many more arrows that cause a lot more suffering. And so like we can't get rid of that first one, but we can get rid of, or not, you know, we can avoid the suffering of all the ancillary additional arrows that come from our mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Which are things like, I shouldn't be sick right now.
That's
Or
right.
like, this shouldn't be happening to me. Yeah.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. Right. It turns out that it's all impermanent, and that like if you can just be with what's happening right now, that's all that needs to happen. Right. It's actually what it's kind of like what you were saying about your own experience in life right now, like that it is possible for you to get all wound up and to get your mind stirred up and busy with a lot of anxious, anxiety making thoughts, or you can simply do what needs to be, you know, done now in the present moment and be as open to it, as clear and present with it as possible, and that's actually sufficient.
Yeah. 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 And much more effective.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
efficient.
exactly. And if we do that when we're sick, if we do that when we're experiencing illness, then that will pass as well.
Yeah. I think a lot of us, I know for myself, I fear that if I accept something like illness or whatever it is, that it'll somehow win, like that
Yeah,
I
yeah.
will I'll lose out, or it'll take over. Do you ever have that kind of fear of like acceptance that it'll, yeah, just not work out in our favor
Yeah.
or
Yeah, well,
something?
it's actually tied to, it's very similar to the idea like that. So humans turn out to be irrational creatures because, you know, ideally we would want to know everything that was wrong with us so that we could do something about it if possible, right? Or at least be aware of it. But it turns out that many of us might avoid going to the doctor, right?
Oh
We
yeah.
might we might not want to examine that, whatever that thing that's causing discomfort or whatever, for fear of making it real somehow.
Yeah.
Like, and I think it's tied to what you're saying. Like, if there's this acceptance, first awareness, but then secondly acceptance, that somehow you're making it more real, right? And
Yeah.
if I just ignore it, it'll go away. But I think that's one of those things where it's actually, if you go right back to the fifth of the five remembrances, that we inherit the results of our actions of body, speech, and mind, and that our actions are continuation. Then we can look at it and we can say, how has ignoring this in the past, how has not being mindful of my body and not being mindful of pain and illness and my body deteriorating and not being willing to accept that, how has that worked out for me in the past? And it certainly hasn't worked out well for anybody ever in the past.
Right. I know. It is so funny when we just kind of look at it logically that way. It's like, oh yeah, that just hasn't worked. And so how about I try this thing?
That's right.
Even though it scares me a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. If we were going to use logic and reason, we would want to shine a bright light on all of, we would want to know everything that was wrong, right? So that if there was an opportunity to change something, then we would. Yeah. But then at the same time, there's balancing it out with the fact that we're not actually in control.
Right. Well, that's such a good thing for us to kind of close out on, is like, yeah, really, really allowing these moments to be things that we can study, opportunities to investigate and really explore the nature of our bodies within samsara, and the impermanence.
I want to make a plug though, can I?
Please, yeah.
I want to plug a YouTube channel called Samaneri Jayasara. She's a Buddhist nun who reads non-dual literature. I think I've mentioned her in the past. She has an entire playlist of readings for illness and death and dying.
Wow.
And they're truly amazing. There was one in particular that I was listening to recently, that is part of the Theravadan forest tradition. I think that's actually, isn't that the same as Thich Nhat Hanh?
Maybe. I know he's the top. Maybe I don't know. I don't want to say.
Yeah. Anyway, I could be wrong about that, but it was incredibly helpful. It was Dhamma for dying and illness, and it came in two parts. Really quite beautiful and powerful reminders of how we can use illness on the path.
Thank you. Yeah. Could you on the Facebook post for this
Sure.
session, you can type it in.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Daniel, so much. Thank you to our folks listening in. It's been a pleasure. I feel like I've learned a lot. I appreciate you.
Certainly. I appreciate you as well. I'm so glad that you're feeling better. I hope that your health just continues on that trajectory and you just get better and better and better.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And
good luck with that heavy workload you got.
Thanks. Yeah, and good luck with the moving and settling in.
And the squirrel.
And the what?
And the
squirrel. Yes, please let us know how it goes.
I will.
And I hope to see some of you in person this weekend. I'll be in Sacramento for a student retreat. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
Fantastic. All right. Toodaloo.
Toodaloo.